That's all, an overview. That's All was written by Alan Brandt and Bob Himes. It was included within the Great American Songbook. The Great American Songbook consisted of the most important and influential songs of the early 20th century. The song selection mainly consisted of popular and jazz song standards. That's All was also included in Alec Wilder's book titled American Popular Song: The Great Innovators 1900 through 1950. That's all standard. Even though this book was only supposed to include songs between the years of 1900 through 1950, Wilder had made an exception for this song. The song was composed 2 years after the year span of his book's song selection. Wilder still felt it was influential enough to include as a song example within the text. The two reasons he had given were that it was one of the last free-flowing native and natural melodies in the grand pop style, and also it went through no initial uh, phrase, but he became an immediate standard. That's all form and structure. That's all follows a typical AABA form, which was commonly seen among Tin Pan Alley's repertoire. It starts with a verse 1, then goes on to verse 2, then the B section, which is a bridge, and then it goes back to verse 3. That's all rhyming scheme of the verses. As you can see on this slide, the verse 1 is included here. I included each line so you can clearly see what the rhyming scheme is. The end of lines 3 and 4 rhyme with one another. The end of line 2 rhymes with the end of lines 5 and 6. This pattern, you will see, is repeated throughout the song. Rhyming scheme of the verses continued. When comparing verse 1 to verse 2, the same rhyming structure is found. The end of the lines 3 and 4 rhyme with one another, and the end of line 2 rhymes with the end of lines 5 and 6. So, verse 1, you can see we have the verse 1, there's line 3, it ends with own, and then line 4 ends with alone. In verse 2, same thing is seen with line 3, which ends with light, and then line 4 would end with night. And then the lines 5 and 6 end with all, which rhyme with call in verse 1 and rhyme with fall in verse 2. The rhyming scheme of verses continued. The same rhyming scheme is found throughout all three verses. In line 2 of verse 1, the word call is used to rhyme with all from lines 5 and 6. In line 2 of verse 2, the word fall is used to rhyme with all. And in line 2 of verse 3, the word small is used to rhyme with the word all. So you'll see the line 2 on this slide. And then line 5 and 6 for the word all on this slide. The rhyming scheme of the bridge is as follows. The end of lines 1 and 3 rhyme with one another, and the end of lines 2 and 4 rhyme with one another. It's a pretty common rhyming scheme, to have one line, there are those I am sure have told you, then to have something else for line 2, and then you come back with some type of rhyming scheme for verse 3. So it's common to see that in the popular songs of today, so I thought that was intriguing to find that in this bridge as well. Another point that I found intriguing was the syllable scheme of the verses. So the syllable scheme present among the verses and the bridge of the song are as follows. So here you could see the syllable scheme of the verses. Each line of the verse decreases in syllables by either one less syllable or four less syllables than the previous line. So if you notice, line 1 has 12 syllables, and then line 2 decreases by only one syllable. Line 3 decreases them by 4. Line 4 decreases by one syllable. Then line 5 decreases by 4 syllables, as well as line 6. The bridge, however, repeats a pattern between going from the length of 10 syllables to 9 syllables, back to 10 syllables, and then back to 9 syllables. So here you'll see the chord analysis of all of the verses as well with the bridge. I just simply labeled the pattern in which the chords follow for the verses, and it's a pretty simple structure. It starts out on the tonic, and it moves back and forth between the tonic and then the third of uh, the the key, and then it progresses from a 2 chord, eventually ending on a 5 chord for the verse 1. The reason why I think it's ending on the 5 chord is just to show that it's a continuation and it's not over yet. It's still continuing on, um, which leads into verse 2 very smoothly. So, verse 2 obviously follows right after, if you'll follow along on the next slide. And here, it's the same exact structure as verse 1. It runs through a tonic to the third, eventually back to the tonic, to a 2, 5, and then resolves on a 1 chord. Now, this sets us up for the bridge very smoothly. The bridge goes through a series of minor chords to the subdominant, leading through a minor 6th chord, eventually ending back at a dominant 7th chord, which ends up being a smooth transition back into verse 3 to end the piece. Verse 3 actually follows the same exact chord progression and an analysis as verse 2, as you could see here on this page. Some style elements that you'll see throughout this piece will be the swinging eighth notes through mainly his vocal melody. The way he sings it, he's always constantly swinging his eighth notes. And then there's the birds chirping in the background also. Well, the flute is representing some type of bird chirp in the background, which it's about a young love. It's sort of like a metaphor for young love and springtime and passion. So I thought that was very interesting in this piece. Another thing you'll see is a melodic repetition throughout the vocals and the instrumentation, which makes the listener, it ends up being very catchy for the listener, and it's easy for the listener to sing along to and memorize quickly. The other thing that I found very interesting and caught on to very quickly was the fact that it was very free flowing of the lyrics with flexible speed of the original vocal performance. And here is just the song for you to listen to.
I can only give you love that lasts forever, and the promise to be near each time you call, and the only heart I own for you and you alone. That's all. That's all. I can only give you country walks in springtime, and a hand to hold when leaves begin to fall, and a love whose burning light will warm the winter night. That's all, that's all. There are those, I am sure, who have told you they would give you the world for a toy. All I have are these arms to enfold you, and a lifetime can never destroy. If you're wondering what I'm asking in return, dear, you'll be glad to know that my demands are small. Say it's me that you'll adore, for now and evermore. That's all. That's all.